If you enjoy cozy winter stories and gentle bedtime adventures, remember to subscribe to Moonlit Whispers and let these soft tales guide you into sleep. Now, settle in, find a comfortable position, and allow this slow winter story to calm your heart and ease your mind. The world was quiet on the edge of the North Pole, quiet in a way that cities and villages never knew. Quiet in a way the rest of the world had forgotten. It was the kind of quiet that felt like velvet laid gently across the land, a quiet made of slow-falling snowflakes and the deep hush of the eternal winter night. Here, where the ice stretched beyond the horizon and the sea breathed softly beneath frozen sheets, lived a young woman named Elisa. Elisa's little cabin, painted a soft evergreen that peeked through layers of snow, stood alone near the edge of a cliff that overlooked the northern sea. It wasn't a dangerous cliff, but a wide, sloping descent of ancient rock and ice that led to the shoreline. From her window, Elisa could see the gentle, rhythmic movement of dark waves brushing against snow-covered stones. Even in the coldest months, the sea lived. It never truly slept. This was the beginning of polar night, a time of year when the sun didn't rise above the horizon at all. The world remained wrapped in a serene twilight around the clock, glowing softly with the blue and purple hues of the long, eternal night. Most people could not imagine living here year-round, but for Elisa, this place was home, her cabin, her sanctuary, her silence, her friend, her winter, her companion. And today was one of those days when she felt her heart soften into the slow rhythm of the season. When Elisa awoke, there was no sunlight peeking through the curtains. There never was, not during the polar nights. Instead, she woke to the soft glimmer of her lanterns. She always left two lit overnight, their flames low and cozy, filling her cabin with a warm amber glow. Around her, wool blankets were wrapped in layers, a cocoon of comfort against the deep cold outside. As she stretched, she heard the wind brush softly against the wooden walls. Not a storm yet, but close. She could feel the weather like others, felt anticipation in the air. Snow was coming, a lot of it. She rose from her bed, slipping her feet into fur-lined slippers and wrapping a thick knitted cardigan around herself. She walked toward the window, pulling back the curtain. Outside, the world looked like a painting in shades of navy and silver. Snow drifted lazily in the air, not in a hurry, as if it had all the time in the world, as it always did in the North Pole. The mountains stood tall in the distance, their peaks pale and soft under the glow of the moonlight that stayed suspended in the sky for hours at a time. The sea below brushed quietly against the frozen shore, sending a gentle mist into the frozen air. Another long night, she whispered softly to herself. Another beautiful one. Elisa made her way into the heart of the cabin, the living area, where her favorite thing in the world lived. The fireplace. It wasn't large, but it was made of sturdy, dark stones gathered from the old mountain ridge years ago. And it was the soul of her home. She kneels, places new firewood inside, and kindles the flame with practiced ease. The fire comes alive with a crackle, painting golden light across the walls. Shadows move gently, like dancing winter spirits. Around the room, she had decorated for the polar night season. Thick wool throws draped over the armchair, candles in small clusters, glowing in every corner, shelves filled with old books and journals, lanterns with frosted glass, dried pine garlands hanging over the windows. On the wooden table, a small cup of cocoa waited for her, the one she had prepared the night before because she loved waking up knowing it was there. A tiny gesture of kindness to herself. She warmed it by the fire and let the scent of chocolate and cinnamon fill the room. This was her world, her peace. By the time she stepped outside to check the sky, the snow had thickened. Flakes drifted like feathers, slow and graceful, but they had grown denser, more insistent. Storm tonight, she murmured, but she wasn't worried. She was prepared. In the North Pole, storms were as common as rain in other places. She walked a few steps away from the cabin, boots crunching on the untouched snow. The silence around her was complete, except for the low hum of the sea far below. The cold nipped at her cheeks, but she loved it. Loved the feeling of the crisp air filling her lungs. Loved the sting of icy wind tugging at her scarf. This was the world she had grown with. After breathing deeply, she returned to her warm cabin, brushing snowflakes from her hair as she entered. That afternoon, just before the snow thickened, Elisa had taken her snowmobile to the nearest settlement, about 30 minutes away. There were only a few small shops there, but they were full of warmth, chatter, and the early rustle of Christmas, because even here at the edge of the world, Christmas was coming. She had wandered through the tiny general store, picking up supplies, grains, cocoa powder, candles, fur-scented oil, extra wool yarn, dried berries, honey, and a new lantern with etched snowflakes on the glass. And of course, she picked up a small Christmas gift for herself. A wooden ornament shaped like a tiny polar fox. At the bakery hut, she bought warm spiced bread and tucked it safely into her bag before heading home. Everyone had been talking about the weeks incoming snowstorm, encouraging her to return home early. And she did, just in time. Now, with everything she needed and the storm waiting on the horizon, she felt safe. The cabin felt even cozier knowing that outside, the world was preparing to roar. Evening, though it looked like midnight, settled softly around her. Elisa lit more candles and warmed a pot of herbal tea on the stove. She added a drop of pine essence, letting the aroma drift through the air. The first rumble of wind came, then another, and slowly, gently, the storm began. It wasn't violent, not like the storms of the deep winter months, but it was heavy. Snow brushed against her windows in waves, tapping gently like gloved fingers. The wind built up in the distance, a low howl moving across the mountains, sweeping down the slopes, brushing past her cabin before it continued on toward the sea. Inside, everything was warm, soft, golden. She wrapped herself in a wool blanket and sat by the window to watch. The snowstorm looked like a world made of white mist. The sky had deepened into indigo, the air thick with swirling flakes, illuminated by the moonlight filtering through gaps in the cloud. She loved storms, loved the way they made her cabin feel like a secret refuge. The polar night season changed everything, not just outside, but inside her heart. For Elisa, these long weeks of darkness were slow, gentle, reflective. The world felt softer. Time felt elastic. The body wanted rest. The mind wanted stillness. She filled her nights with reading old journals, knitting wool scarves, painting tiny landscapes of snow and ice, writing letters she may or may not send, baking spiced cookies to share with neighboring cabins, and tending to her little indoor plants that somehow survived the cold. She also kept a telescope by the back window. During clear nights, the sky was an ocean of stars. The Milky Way stretched like a river of silver light, and sometimes, just sometimes, the northern lights danced across the sky, green and violet, shimmering like magic only the North Pole knew how to create. Tonight, though, the sky held only snow, and she didn't mind one bit. As the storm deepened, Elisa placed a pot of vegetable stew on the stove. The scent of rosemary and garlic filled the cabin. She set the table with a single candle, a wooden bowl, a wool placemat, and a steaming cup of berry tea. She ate slowly, enjoying every bite, listening to the wind outside. After dinner, she tidied up, hummed a little tune she remembered from childhood, and fed the fire more wood. The flames crackled, warm and bright. She brought out the little wooden ornament she bought earlier that day. The polar fox was carved beautifully, with gentle curves and tiny etched paws. It made her smile. Christmas was coming. Even during the polar night, she felt it. Even without sunlight, the holiday carried its own light. She placed the fox on her small wooden shelf near the fireplace. Her Christmas decorations were always simple, natural, handmade, or gifted by neighbors over the years. The storm outside grew thicker, but the cabin grew warmer. Before settling into her reading chair, Elisa took a moment to step outside. She wrapped herself well and opened the cabin door. The world outside had nearly disappeared beneath the snow. Her porch was already layered in soft drifts. The wind gently tugged at her scarf. Everything was quiet again, storm quiet, the kind that came between gusts. She looked up. Even through the snow, she could see the faint glow of the moon. She smiled to herself. Inside again, she changed into her warmest cotton nightdress, lit a cluster of candles, and sank into her armchair with a book. She read slowly, letting the words drift around her like the snow outside. Eventually, she closed the book, not because she was tired, but because she enjoyed the silence even more. The fire crackled, the candles flickered, the storm whispered, the sea hummed in the distance. Her heart felt full as the hours passed, not that she measured them. Elisa made her way to her cozy bed. She pulled the blankets around herself and listened to the storm outside. It was steady now, like a lullaby of wind and snow. The polar night wrapped its darkness around the cabin. The fire glowed softly, casting dancing shadows. Her breath slowed, her body softened, her mind grew quiet and warm. And slowly, gently, Elisa drifted into sleep, safe in her cabin at the edge of the world. Christmas would come soon, and tomorrow she would begin preparing for it. But for now, the long night held her softly, like a cradle made of winter. The storm outside whispered, and the fire inside answered, and Elisa slept peacefully, happy and content of her little cozy life she had built in this secluded corner of the world.